right. Good afternoon, Brooke. How's it going?
Conrad, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. An honor to be back with Tom today. For those that
Yes.
don't know, I do some other stuff as well, and I got the great pleasure of recording with him twice. I'm curious, Brooke, how did you originally meet Tom? How did you guys connect originally?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. Tom goes, I think it was a VR Mintel in Gatlinburg, which from the book you'll learn and his mistakes. I think that was his first kind of conference event he went to, and we kind of chatted there and became close friends. And he ended up becoming a Vintory partner and just hit it off. Probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the industry. So really, really excited about this episode.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Tom, welcome. Would love to hear more about your background. Brooke mentioned a few little nuggets there the listener might pick up on where you're located, all that kind of stuff. But for those that don't know you, would you mind maybe just sharing a little bit about your background, your history, how you got into the space that we're in today?
Sure, Conrad. Well, my name is Tom Goodwin, and I am the owner and CEO of Mountain Laurel Chalets in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And an interesting fact about our company, we are celebrating our 52nd year this year, and it is family owned. I married into the industry. So in 1992, I married my wife, and her parents were the founders and owners of Mountain Laurel in Gatlinburg. And at that moment, I became intrigued by the hospitality they offered to others and that they were real pioneers and forerunners in the industry. I'm appreciating that more and more. And at that point, my wife and I were working with a religious nonprofit on a kind of a global scale, and we're really committed to that work. And then in 2012, the family asked me to step in and kind of right the ship, so to say, for the company. We noticed some things that weren't going the way we had hoped that they were going. And so I thought, well, I'll give it 6 months and I'll take a leave of absence. And then that became 18 months. Then it became owning the business. And then, 11 years later, I'm pretty immersed in it and loving the not only the community of Gatlinburg, but the industry of short-term rentals and vacation rental management.
Mhm.
So when you took it over, I'm sure you came in, you're like, oh, how hard can this be, right?
I had no idea what I was doing. So I came in, kind of working for this global nonprofit and had really done a lot of work in marketing, branding, leadership, people development, culture. And I asked Kay, our property manager at the time, and she's still with us. She had been with us 20 years at that point. And I said, okay, what did my predecessor do on a day-to-day basis? She goes, I have no idea. So there were no systems, there was nothing documented. And I said, okay, I'm starting from scratch. And the family asked me to do this, and I'm just going to move ahead and believing that I think I know what I'm doing. So I think 11 years later, I kind of know what I'm doing, but it's exciting because there's always something new to learn.
Yeah. I feel like there's always an accidental story, Brooke, but I feel like this is one of the more unique ones I've ever heard. Usually it's like I bought one and then I couldn't trust the management company. That's usually the story. This one is one of a kind though with Tom, isn't it?
No, I love this story. It's fantastic, and the fact 52 years, Tom. I mean, that's incredible. I don't think there other than maybe Clark Twitty. Twitty's been running for 50
Even
years. I don't know. No,
yeah.
there's not too many companies out there that have been running that long in this business.
Uh, Jason I think in North Carolina, I'm trying to remember his last name. He's got a family. He's second generation family run business as well. But yeah, they were pioneers. They were the third vacation rental management company in Gatlinburg. We're now the oldest because those other two companies have sold or they're no longer in business. But they would receive phone calls before they got in the industry from Wilma Maples or Pauline Huff, who owned the two historic hotels downtown. And it's 1972. People mailed in their checks or they called a front desk and people showed up at their hotel and there was no room at the inn. So they called Dot and Ralph and said, can you help us out? And my wife and her sister would move out of their bedroom and put, it had a patio entrance, in suite bath, two queen poster beds, and they would rent that out for $12 a night. And so then how it continued was other owners in the area, the Chalet Village area, was not a vacation rental area. It was private homes that were used for personal use. Those owners knew that Dot and Ralph lived there, gravel roads. They were the only one with four-wheel drive, and they weren't there. They said, we'll give you the keys to our house. Will you look at it when temps go low and make sure our pipes don't freeze? And so they became just neighborly caretakers of other people's homes. And these were eccentric people, traveled all over the world and had fabulous 8-acre lots that are really pristine. And because of the hospitality of my mother and father-in-law, when those people passed on, they put in their wills that Dot and Ralph could get the first right of refusal to purchase. So they began purchasing properties back, in the 70s. And so we are the beneficiaries, the three children and our families, of stewarding that legacy and the land and the homes and the kind of the history of
Wow,
Gatlinburg in the Chalet Village area.
what a great
Yeah.
story.
The
I,
the only one I could think of, Brooke, when I used to work for ICD. Brandon's wife, Whitney. I don't know if you met her before.
yeah,
She worked. She owns Sloan Vacations, and I looked on their website. They've been around since '55. So that's the
wow.
only other one that I've seen before.
That's right. Midget,
Yeah,
right? Is Midget Realty. They've been around for north of 50 years too. They're one of our
yeah, they
partners.
might be one
Yeah.
of the older ones too.
Yeah.
No,
Well, Tom, what interesting thing is that with your wife like moving out of her room, it's like it's what's old is new again, right? It's like now it's the
shared room.
Airbnb shareable rooms, right?
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, awesome. Well, Tom, I want to be respectful of time and getting into everything here on the mistakes because you've got 10 well-written mistakes. So if you're cool with it, we can dive right in.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Number one, I wish I had engaged with the local Chamber of Commerce sooner. Being a platinum sponsor is worth every dollar. So, what was the initial hesitation, perhaps, behind not going into the Chamber of Commerce, and what benefits have you seen since then?
Well, not going into the Chamber of Commerce was kind of a financial decision and sponsorship, and just wondering how would they help us, and it's just suspicion. I look back and I think that was a huge mistake. And instead of moving towards them, and we were members of the Chamber of Commerce, we've been members since we were founded. But it's the sponsorship and investing money, and that's one of our best investments is our annual platinum membership, because it gives us exposure in the community. It makes us, a small company known by other business owners that are part of the chamber, and it's also a responsible thing to do, to be a part of your local community and to give back. And it gives us a voice with regulation. It gives a voice with the needs of vacation rental management. And being a platinum sponsor in any way that you can sponsor a little bit above just being a regular member gives you perks and benefits and access to their incredible marketing powerhouse of millions of people that come to their website compared to who come to mine.
Mhm.
So any way that I can partner with them is kind of my first marketing dollars that I will spend, because they do such an outstanding job.
Yeah, that's great. Not a lot of people mention this, Conrad. I think if I go
No.
through like the 52 mistakes, I think there was only one or two people that actually mentioned this one. And it's funny because when I launched Vantage, it was the first thing I did. Same thing, exactly what you agreed to, Tom. But I remember one person, I actually had an SEO guy, and he said, "Brooke, sign up with a local chamber. Like that is probably one of the best things you can do from an SEO perspective, really quickly out of the gates." And Conrad, obviously, this is your wheelhouse, and this is what you do. But obviously, getting that .org and connected, that link back is pretty important. And it's from bang for the buck. It was the most important thing that he could do. And one of my competitors in Ocean City, I remember he told me, he's like, we get more leads from that chamber website than anything else out there by far.
Yeah, I always think a well-run chamber is a great, ally and weapon on your side. I think just because I've worked in so many different destinations over the years, I've seen some some horribly bad, examples of it. But when you've got a good one, to your point, Tom, they're your advocate, and that's really their primary responsibility is to increase awareness, increase tourism. It's almost like you have a little agency working for you. To your point, Brooke, about giving you a link that's going to help your SEO get going and stuff like that. So definitely can help. Awesome. Well, number two, then, kind of a similar thing, and perhaps the origin story of why we all got connected here today. Number two, I didn't attend conferences in my first 8 years of running the company, but in February of 2020, interesting time, I attended VRM Intel because it was local and it was a game changer. Thanks to Amy Hynode for coming to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So, what got you out of the office and into that VRM Intel event, and what sort of benefits did you see from that, Tom, other than meeting Brooke, of course?
Well, it was a mile from my office. I had no excuse but to go. And it was like an eye opener for me. I was like, wow, there are vendors, there are suppliers, there are people that are passionate about what I'm passionate about. And I was oblivious. We had been on and off members of VRMA. We joined like the Tennessee Hospitality Association, and mileage varied on some of those things, but I just always thought, well, they're overpriced, difficult to get to. I can't fly, I can't leave the company. But because Amy Hynode brought it to Gatlinburg, a mile from my office, I thought, well, I'm going to go. And I thought I have totally been missing out on the network of relationships, the access to information. it's almost, I was just living in a cocoon. I was unaware of what was out there. And so I'm on the kind of ambassador committee for Verma as well. And so I get to make those phone calls to people that are new members, which is really huge because I encourage them with, with my story. And most of them just are unaware of the opportunities and the conferences that are out there. So every time I can go to a conference, I go, and I always get so much out of it, and relationships, like that's where I met Brooke. And I look back at that conference, and the first meeting, how I met people was at that conference.
It makes me wonder how many people actually, were like you that aren't going to these. It's, to me, it seems like everyone goes, but I know it's probably a small percentage. I'd love to see the numbers of, I guess, how many people are actually attending these, or how many companies are attending these events, and how many actual professional short-term vacation rental managers are actually out there. But yeah, in my mind, everyone's going. But it's, Tom, this one came up time and time again. I think it was like the number one or number two most popular mistake is just not going to these soon enough. And the kind of the running joke is, like, most of the learnings usually happen at, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night at a bar. It's not necessarily in a session so much. I mean, although there's obviously lots of great content and sessions, but it's usually just that little casual comment that somebody makes, at the bar, that you're like, oh my gosh, that was the nugget you came home with that saved you 10 grand immediately, or helped you make another $10,000-$20,000.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's always great when it's close by, Tom. That always makes it a little bit easier to
No
to
excuses.
get things going. Yeah,
Thanks,
exactly.
Amy.
Yeah. We owe me thanks for sure.
Yeah, that timing was a little suspicious there, right? It was probably COVID was probably flying around at that time.
Yeah,
right
before it. Yeah,
it was like, what's that thing happening in China right now? We shouldn't worry about it. That's what I said in January of 2020. I remember this doesn't seem like a big deal. Whoops, was wrong about that. All right, number 3. I didn't use to collaborate with like-minded business owners. Our industry often makes competition out to be the enemy, and it's easy to operate as an island. However, it's not wise. Thanks, Lauren Madewell, for changing our perspective. Another interview here on the podcast. But what's kind of been your relationship, if you want to share with Lauren specifically, Tom, but just broadly with other competitors in your space? You're in one of the most competitive markets, in the U.S., in my opinion. So I'm curious how you approach that.
Yeah, it's a very dense market, and there's a lot of competition. And really, when I came in, there was in the same way I didn't go to conferences, I kind of felt like everyone was secretive and everyone was protective of their assets and their best practices. And there wasn't a sense of sharing or what I call an abundance mentality. And I bought into that and was fearful and, secretive, and didn't trust anyone else. And I think going to these events and conferences really, changed that perspective. I kind of going back to number 2. I think I have the year wrong on Verma, or the VRM Intel. I think it was right after the fires in 2017.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was thinking 2020. That wasn't 2020. It was right after the fires in Gatlinburg in 2016. But, and not that I have arrived in this area, but there are some great relationships that I do have. Lauren Madewell and her dad, John Madewell. I met him at the VRM Intel conference, and he said, Tom, we used to vacation with your company, because we were here before Antebellum's was. And so he says that was part of our, inspiration and brand standard of let's do this out in Pigeon Forge. And so meeting those people and working with them, example with Lauren, it's just fun to cut up with Lauren. She's hilarious, but she also has a great mind and has some great services. We instituted a peace of mind refund policy based on Antebellum's policy for their refund, and she shared all of it with me. This has been great for us. This has been a great revenue maker, and it allows for concerns on cancellation. And we went to a chamber event together. I introduced her to people in Gatlinburg, and it's just reciprocal, and it's beneficial. And I think there's 25,000 rental unit opportunities in Gatlinburg. There's plenty. I have 75. It's not like I have to be fearful of others. So I want Lauren to succeed. I want Cabins for You to succeed. I want Jackson Mountain Homes to succeed, because especially as they all succeed and they implement professional standards, it just increases the value of vacation rentals in our community, which is important.
Yeah. I mean, this was a mistake I made. I didn't reach out to my competitors. And after I sold Vantage, I remember going down to Orlando, and Steve Trover, I mean, he had all the CEOs in his conference room almost once a month. It was almost like a Godfather movie. It was weird, like, walking out. And I was like, what is going on? And he's like, oh, we just get together, collectively. And I thought that was just the greatest thing. And I wish I would have done it as well. But I mean, this came up time and time again. I mean, Sarah Bradford talked about it. Steve Schwab talked about it. Justin Ford, Kirsten King talks about, she wished she, not asking for help from my colleagues in the industry when I really could have used their expertise and advice. And Gotti, Mike Harrington discovered, I learned most of the time, your competitors are just trying to keep up with the day-to-day demands, just like you. There's enough business out there for everyone, just kind of like what you iterated there, Tom. So it's a mistake that I think a lot of people do, and it takes a little too long to get there.
I feel like that's like typical business book advice, though, right? Is like you should keep an eye on your competitors. You should be scared of them and stuff like that. I think it's maybe we just picture this large corporate, Coca-Cola and Pepsi don't hang out, therefore Tom and Lauren shouldn't hang out. But that's not really how it works, right? Like in this real world, to your point, Tom, no one probably has more than a few percentage points of the inventory, anyways, even the biggest companies.
See, me personally, what I've focused on now, though, is like I'm not as competitor focused. I just focus on our customer and like let the competitors, worry about me. But if I'm focused on our customer, like that's the most important thing. And I don't really get too bogged down. And like, I mean, some of these companies, I mean, they are like tracking every booking, every website. I mean, they're scraping their websites. They're just seeing how they're doing. I mean, just focus on your customer.
So there was an interesting thing you had in here. I don't think we heard this one very often. Number 4, there was a time when I allowed people with limiting beliefs to suppress my ideas and vision. It was difficult to fully lead when people were occupying my mind with limiting beliefs. Could you explain that for me a little bit? What is a limiting belief? How did it impact your vacation rental company?
Well, I think it impacted me as a leader moving into this with some of my insecurities of thinking I've never done this before. Are my ideas right? Questioning a lot of what I was doing as opposed to going full throttle into it. But I would often be around other people that would say, well, we've never done it that way before. We can't do that. And that no was the answer. And my executive coach said to me, he goes, how are limiting beliefs affecting your leadership? And it really made me observe comments and the people I was around. And are their beliefs limited? Are they not blue sky thinking? Are they restrictive? Are they, is the answer no? How often can we respond with, yes, we can do that? And so I need to be around people like that. And in the beginning, I wasn't exposed to a lot of those people, frankly, at work and in the company that was trying to give management to. And it limited me as a leader. So I was taking their cue and their lead, and the ceiling only rose as high as their limiting beliefs. And I said, I'm kind of done with this, and I need to own this, and I need to move forward and not to let my insecurities and their limiting beliefs prevent me from dreaming and from imagining what a better future would be.
Yeah. Even though people didn't say this, Brooke, I feel like this is common. We all have limiting beliefs in some respect, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's not only just the limiting beliefs, but Tom, you said something that resonated so well with me. When I came from mortgage banking, you know what I mean? I was in banking my entire career. And then obviously we know what happened kind of in 2007. So I ended up somehow, like everybody, stumbling into short-term rentals. And I remember launching this, and I realized, and one thing I knew was I had to do something different. I couldn't do it like everybody else. If I built the same company that everybody else had, like we wouldn't have anything. So I had to differentiate. And I remember my kind of our GM or COO, if you will, and I would ask her like, what about this? And she's like, Brooke, that's not the way it's done here. That's not the way it's done in Ocean City. And I love that. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, to give you an idea, nobody, like, we didn't provide linens. Nobody provided linens in Ocean City. And I was like, this is absurd. And now everybody does it. But it was one of those things where every time I heard that comment, Brooke, that's not the way it's done here. That's not the way we do it. I was like, perfect. Let's go forward. Let's trudge forward. That means I know I'm in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, Brooke, we've worked together for a while now. You're not a limiting belief kind of person yourself. If anything, Brooke is like Matt Landau. He has unlimited belief. You know what I mean? Like he's got that kind of piece going for him, which is fun, obviously. But yeah, you're right, Tom. It's so easy, I think, too, when you're the leader and you listen. Especially if you're giving instruction. We talked about this previously. You're telling someone on your team, "Hey, I kind of want it done this way," and the way they immediately start pushing back, you do tend to pull back because you don't want to be like the overbearing, "I'm going to tell you exactly how to do a person." That usually doesn't endear yourself very well to people for very long. So it's very hard, the position you were in, to like maybe have that negative feedback or, like you were saying, limiting feedback coming your way a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah. So it was a matter of just kind of getting down to my core and thinking, what am I believing in? What is important to me? And even my COO says to me, he goes, instead of making suggestions, I think you need to say to me, Corey, this is really important to me. I want this done. And he's like,
Mhm.
that's much more helpful for me. And so that's just a basic leadership principle, and being direct and being, owning what you want and the results that you want as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, this next one kind of ties into leadership as well. So we'll head over here to number 5. I didn't used to ask myself what I'm afraid of as a leader. I now know that by asking the question and identifying my fears, I'm able to remember what is true as opposed to being limited by fear. So this is kind of a continuation of that last idea of how do we, be confident too and get rid of those fears and lead with purpose and lead the right way. What have you learned here on this piece?
Well, I learned I'm not alone in this, and we can do a lot of posing. And you go to conferences, you want your best foot forward, your best face, or even podcasts like this. And it's what's so intriguing about Brooke's book is we're all exposing our weaknesses or our mistakes. But isn't that so refreshing and really countercultural in most Western American productive industrial businesses? We all want to appear stronger and better than we are. But we all have fears. We all have things that are outside of our comfort zone, things that we can't predict the future. And we can have that a lot within our industry because we can't predict what the market's going to do and how people are going to respond. And it's a lot of guessing and quicking or quick correction, pivoting, and so forth. But my thought is, my executive coach, in the same case, I've been with this executive mastermind group for 14 years. We meet once a month all day, and then I get individual coaching with him. He asks fantastic questions. And when I'm kind of at a sticking point, he says, Tom, what are you afraid of? And so instead of avoiding what I'm afraid of, if I confront what I'm afraid of, then I can enter into the situation and say, hey, I'm afraid, but I'm still going to do this. And I think Amber Hurdle, I wasn't at the Women's Summit, but she talked about do it afraid, or do it, just go ahead and do it and move into it. And I thought that's exactly the concept of what I was thinking. If we acknowledge that we're human and that we have insecurities or we have fears, and we identify what those are, but we press into it and we move into it. And even if you can communicate with another friend, an ally, a coach, it just builds up more confidence. So you're not an island, you're not isolated. And it also then breaks down some of the misconceptions or the posing that some of us can get trapped in.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have egos too, right, Brooke? It's hard to separate the ego completely because we want to be successful. And to Tom's point, we want to posture a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like whenever I have that thing that I'm just dreading to do, it reminds me of that book. What is it? Eat That Frog. It's like, whenever you have that thing you're just dreading, like just do it first, get it out of the way. And then you'll feel so refreshed when it's done. But I still, easier said than done, because I feel like I still procrastinate those things that I really don't want to do, those uncomfortable conversations or whatever happens to be.
Coastal Carolina, fall of 2009, Brooke. They handed me that book and they said, read this book. This is your freshman orientation. Read this. And although I admit I didn't eat the frog every day, whenever I felt like not doing something, I was like, I got to eat the frog, man. And like it did teach me, to be honest, that doesn't need to be a book. That's like a 2-page kind of thing. But he does go into a lot of detail and they made me read that one. So yeah, I read that when I was 18 years old, and I was like, that kind of is the key to life, honestly. Just eating the frog as much as possible, basically. So awesome. Well, let's see. Things that are not frogs. Let's head over to number 6 here for you, Tom. I tried to juggle too many balls instead of hiring out and or delegating more. There are things that I'm good at and enjoy doing that still are not the best use of your time. I had to learn to say no and trust others to handle those details. Being good at something is both a blessing and a curse. I feel the same way, Tom. If I'm good at something, it's hard for me to give it away because sometimes the person you give it to doesn't do as good of a job at you. Was that kind of the same logic you had, or it was just kind of the control piece? What was the pieces you learned there about delegation?
Well, I think we all have a sense of control, and especially when you own a company, every element of it reflects you. So it's the harder work to inspire and to set the standard and to call this out of other people to do things. But I was trying to do way too much and learn all the aspects. And even today, I realize, okay, what is my job as the owner of the company and the CEO, and what isn't my job? And a nameplate I have on my desk is, Tom Goodwin, Mount Laurel Chalets, and on the other side facing me, it says, whose job am I doing? Am I doing someone else's job? And that's why I've hired people to do those jobs. And if they're not doing it at the level that I would expect, or a brand standard or so forth, then I need to coach them through that. And that's my job, to coach them to be successful, not to do their job for them. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not willing to do all the jobs in my company, from emergency laundry or running an errand or, helping out. They don't really want me to help with maintenance. It's not my forte by any means. But I really shouldn't be doing revenue management. I shouldn't be doing all the data. I should be more of the spokesperson, working with the owners, doing the sales, setting the culture. But I am really bad at following through on small details, and my team knows that. And so I have to stop myself and say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to mess it up for you. I'm going to let you all run those things. But you can't be everything. And so I just figure out, well, whose job am I doing? I need to do my job and not someone else's job. And so that's more of just focus. And I think in your 30s, you're willing to do everything and explore everything and risk everything. I'm way past my 30s and 40s. So I'm like thinking, okay, what is my best contribution at this time, and do that.
Yeah. I think like 20 people mentioned this, Conrad. I mean, this was like number 2, number 3 for sure. And it was, luckily I actually don't have this problem. I would gladly, I know my deficiencies. I do not have detail. I'm like you, Tom. I don't have detail. I don't have follow-up, and I don't pay attention to those things. So I'd much rather delegate it to people that do have those. And luckily I surround myself with a whole team of people that have a lot of detail, and a lot of follow-up. So I have no problem, doing it. But it is one of those things that I do try to start my day with, like, what are the things that only I can do? There's certain things as the owner, CEO of this company that only I can do. And I start there, and really just try to, check those boxes and fill that bucket first. That's how I kind of prioritize my day. But it's easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah. It's easy, especially I think in this business too, Tom, to fill your day with those smaller things, because there's always small things happening. There's an owner that wants to report on something. There's a guest that has a toilet clogged, right? It's so easy to fall in that trap. There's 1,000 things that go on every day, right?
And I love the unexpected surprises that happen every day in the business. You're at the office, you're like, I had no idea that my day was going to go in this direction. And you've got to allow yourself some flexibility. But you also need to, there's only things that I can do. And if I don't do them, then in the long run, we're not going to be growing as a company.
Yeah, I think that's well said on both ends there. All right, let's head over to lucky number 7. Number 7, I sometimes misunderstood the value of investing with excellence in mind. I was always looking for a bargain. You get what you pay for. I'm learning more and more that spending resources on competent staff, tools, quality services, etc., pays off in the long run. The quote I've heard here, Tom, is something to the effect of, the benefit of a cheap price feels good in that moment, but the pain is forever. Whereas when you buy it the right way, that pain is temporary, but the good feeling is forever. What's kind of been your evolution of thought processes here of making the right investment?
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm cheap. I do like a bargain. And, I have 3 daughters that are CPAs, and they really care about money and, are frugal and great with their money. And so I've always loved a good deal. And with my background in nonprofit and ministry, I had to live on good deals. But when I came into the company, I needed to switch that and think I need to invest in the company. And if I'm patching it up with Band-Aids, it's not going to last. And so one of the best things I did was hire out a consulting firm to work with us on branding in 2012, 2013, right when I took over. We had a 40-year-old tired brand, but we had an excellent product and we had a fabulous story, but the brand was not representing that. I had worked in branding with this nonprofit, and that nonprofit had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on branding, well spent. So I had an appreciation for what the cost would be for that, invested that in Mountain Laurel, and I don't look back at all on those expenses that we paid. In fact, we rebranded again, and after our 50th anniversary, it was a refresh, spent more money on that, and it just quality, beauty, something that's long lasting. It has a lot of depth. And the same ways, you want to get the cheapest washing machine, or do you want to go with industrial washers? Do you want to get the cheapest front desk worker who, is coming off fast food and has, not that fast food is a bad, industry, but if that's the only experience and it's kind of a once and done, we're a hospitality business. So we've got to move towards a higher pay rate and a more professional, response of our employees. So I adopted and inherited a company with 26, 28 employees, whittled it down to 8 at COVID, and we've built up to 14 employees and several contractors. I wouldn't trade any of them. So they're really committed to these standards, and that's taken 11 years. And so as we move forward, I realized that, I have a full-time director of marketing and communications. That's kind of a luxury to have, but it pays off in spades as I'm investing in that.
Yeah, where I find it's the team. If you hire that A player, and the difference between an A player sometimes and even just a B player, even though your B player is great, but if you have that A player, they are always accretive. They will always pay for themselves 10x over. And sometimes, if you got to pay up a little bit, pay an extra $10,000, $20,000 to get that A player. I found in my experience, if they really are truly that A player, they will always be accretive.
And it also kind of segues into the conferences. I've brought more of our team members to conferences, which, as we all know, is an expense. You bring 4 people to a conference, it's easily $10,000, $15,000. But I heard from other leaders in the industry, have them go to the conference and say, I want to learn an idea that's going to save our company the amount of money it costs them to send me to this conference. And so it pays off. It gives them the same network and relation skills and exposure to other people within the conference. It costs money, but the dividends are great.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't the quote, Brooke, something to the effect of like, what if we train our people and they leave? And then what happens if we don't train them and they stay? It's kind of like, what kind of people do you have on the team, right? So I think there's a lot of value in that for sure, Tom. All right, number 8, we're heading along here pretty decently. In the hustle and bustle of running a busy company, I've not always put enough emphasis on proactively and regularly communicating with homeowners. Thankfully, we are on week 7 of a new vlog that goes out and keeps owners informed and connected. This was a pretty common one. I think this is a common one that people get to. Hey, you're getting your check on time, owner. What's the problem? I don't see what the issue is, but what's been the benefits that you've seen from this, Tom? Because I imagine some time has elapsed since you wrote this in the book as well.
I think we're on 7 months now with really regular communication. Our communication was sporadic before. When something were to happen, policy change or an industry change or something that we changed in the company, we would inform our owners. So we changed. Jordan Watts, who's my director of marketing and communication, really puts an email out to all of our exec and leadership team. What's the information we need to communicate with our owners? So we're consolidating the information at least once a month, usually twice a month. We're sending out the family room. So we use video, we use content, all sorts of ways to communicate with them. But the family room allows a point of regular communication with them, being proactive as opposed to responding to what their concerns are. And how many of us have gotten a call from an owner like, oh, crap, I wish I would have called them first because I know what they're calling about and I don't want to answer the phone. Then you move into your fears and you answer the phone, and it is exactly what you should have done. So when you have a regular cadence of communicating with your most important audience, your investors, it will prove beneficial in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this came up a couple of times. I mean, owner communication is so important. If you think these are your business partners, and you have to over communicate. This came time and time again. I think it was Jason Sprinkle said. He said you can never have enough owner communication. You build trust and relationships with open, honest, transparent, and frequent communications. There is very little that can't be cured with great owner communication. And then Lino at Scenic Stays said, don't underestimate the importance of proactive communication to owners. Here's the big part. Even when it's bad news, get out in front of it. Don't let them be the one that finds the mistakes. You get out in front of it. I love the fact, Tom, that you're using video to do these things. I mean, that's a brilliant idea.
What we realized on the video is that it was all video and it was animation and wording and so forth. And our owners tend to trend older. And so half of them weren't watching. We were able to track, and they are just used to digital words and, a basic email. So we still used a kind of creative branded format, but we interspersed just worded content along with the video. And then we also include, if I'm on a podcast or if we have a special event, we'll do a link to, something that can get more information. And mileage varies on how many owners are clicking everything that we have, but that we offer them, but we're taking the initiative and communicating in a way that they're going to listen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think too, sometimes it's like I find when someone offers that communication to you, you don't have to consume the whole thing to be like, they got it. So in other words, by offering it, even if they don't read every single word, they get the gist, or they pick at the thing. Oh, that's really what I was interested in. I got that piece of information. And certainly then they can never go back to you and say, well, I didn't hear from you, because you can point back to like, what about here, and here when we sent out information to you. So I think there's a lot of value in that for sure. All right, number 9, after the catastrophic Gatlinburg fires of 2016, I let our email list and weekly emails go stagnant while I dealt with the most most pressing issues. Thanks to Switchback for getting us on track for the last 18 months. So what was that moment like? I mean, I'm obviously, I was aware of it from afar, but what was that moment like, and how did you get things back on track? I guess both the company itself and then all the marketing communication that went out as well.
Yeah, we in 2016 November, we lost half our business in one night, and our family lost 7 homes, 2 apartment buildings, and then we had 46 homes that were lost. And so we're scrambling, and in the first 4 days, we didn't know if the city of Gatlinburg was still standing. We had no access to it, and so all of that, the city was protected, and Gatlinburg has rebounded amazingly, and that sort of tragedy exposed the sense of loyalty and love that people have for our community. And they were the underdog. They wanted us to win. And so there was a great opportunity for that. But, we had we were in crisis. You think of the fires in Lahaina and Maui, it's crisis. And you've got to respond to that crisis. But I let our email, I didn't really appreciate the regular communication with our 20,000 guests. We went to social media primarily, and we had a huge engagement on social media, but we kind of let our email list lag. And part of it was like, it's too much work. I don't have someone that can coordinate it, make it look pretty, make it look branded. And then I thought, no, this is crazy. I've got this huge resource of 20,000, 25,000 repeat signed in guests. They're not people that, we just acquired their emails, but they opted in. So we onboarded with Switchback, and they've been a great partner with that. And now Jordan, my director of marketing and communication, works with them. So we've scaled back on some of them, and we provide all the content, and we direct that more, and we do weekly emails with our guests. Same thing with Google AdWords and SEO. You just have to continually stay on top of it. You can't let it lag. With COVID, we stopped SEO because we were closed for 7 weeks. We didn't know if we'd ever open again. No one knew what was going on. And I wish I would have kept a trickle going, during that time. And so you got to play some catch up, after that. And so it's just a part of being cheap, or part, thinking of, I'm going to save some money, but in the long run, it took us a little bit longer to catch up on those things. And it's really productive and helpful for us now.
Well, I'm sure your guests wanted to hear what was going on. Like they were out of the loop too. They want to know what's going on in Gatlinburg, and obviously having that voice to be able to communicate, I'm sure that would have been beneficial. Obviously, you're building. This is a long-term relationship you've had with many of these guests. I'm sure, like generations after generations have probably stayed with you. So,
yeah, we really focused all of our communication on Facebook Lives and Facebooks, and it blew up. I mean, it was an amazing response, and the loyalty and our social connection on Facebook with our age group, that we focus on, huge. It was phenomenal, and it still is. And the engagement of our guests, they're just fierce brand followers, and they're vocal about it, which is fantastic. So there was a real positive for that, because we wanted to do live news. So I did live news every day in Gatlinburg of what was happening, and it really met a need. But I let the email stuff lag.
Yeah. I think there were, like, to your point, Tom, where it's kind of, it can be multi-channel, right? It can be social, and then you send an email saying, hey, here's a link to our Facebook page, here's what's going on, right? You can kind of have to both touch points.
We do a blog now, we do an email about the blog, we do a social post. It all connects together now, which is, come on, duh, that's pretty 101. I've read your book, Conrad, so maybe it's level 3, I think.
Yeah, getting multi-channel is hey, for some people it's hard for them to get one thing out. So to be able to get multiple things out, it's not certainly something that happens right away, but then you see the benefits of it down the road. Awesome. Well, a fun one to end on, given the topic, and a bit of a departure from the last topic. Number 10, I've dreamed of starting a podcast. Wish I'd started one 5 years ago. Still haven't done this. Ask me again in the year. Tom, how's the podcast planning going? I don't think it's been a year, but
we have a plan for the podcast. We have a URL. We have the strategy for it, and now we are going to start creating the content. And want to get a good 3 months of content before we launch it, but it will be specific to the market, not necessarily specific to vacation rentals. It'll, however, be sponsored by Mountain Laurel Chalets.
Love
and I'll save the name, because I'm really excited about the name for the reveal and the launch. So, but yeah, we've got our plan for it. So we're hoping. Of course, I wanted to launch it, 6 weeks from now. And Jordan, my director of marketing, laughed at me. She goes, no. We need to really do all the back work on this and make sure it's a strong launch. So sooner the better, but I want to launch it really well. So I'm very excited about it.
Well,
Phenomenal.
That's awesome, Tom. We're going to hold you accountable, obviously. Make sure you do this. But that's awesome. I heard some stat. What is it, Conrad? It's like the average podcast launches one podcast. Like that's it. They stop right there. They realize like, man, there's a lot more work than it looks like. So I like the idea of pre-recording. I think we've got, before we haven't even launched yet, as we're recording this here in end of January, and we've got about 20 in the hopper. So hopefully we at least have a good 6 months pre-recorded before we even launch. So we beat the record, or we beat the average, I should say.
Awesome.
You're breaking the fourth wall of the listener, Brooke, but it's all good. It's the people on the other side don't know. But yeah, I think the reason I think that can work for the show, Brooke, is that these mistakes are somewhat timeless, right? Like what Tom's talking about, it would be relevant in 2024. It's going to be relevant in 2029, 2034. It's probably all going to be the same stuff, right? A lot of these things keep popping up again and again, and the tools and the tactics and the platforms are going to change a little bit. But I think when you storytell about your destination, going back to this mistake, Tom, about what the opportunity is in front of you, you're also setting yourself apart from the competition who's not doing that, right? Airbnb is not going to go do a podcast about Gatlinburg and what's going on in the local community. So you really are separating yourself too, in my mind, from like a brand perspective. So love to see that. I'll definitely listen out to some of the episodes when you share them. So I'll keep it tuned into your LinkedIn and see what's going on there. Brooke, I think we've got one more thing to ask Tom before we let him depart for today. So let me flip it your way.
Yeah. First off, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. I always appreciate you. And, like I said, good friend and just really, really grateful that you came on here. So thank you very much. But the last question I have is, if you could go back and give your 25-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
Well, I was 25. I hadn't met my wife yet. And I would say, go find Susan Egley and marry her. And I'm glad that actually happened. So 32 years later, it's the best decision I could ever make. I think so much is wrapped up in some of these things, more of the fears and the insecurities. And I would tell myself, it's okay to fail quickly and make a quick correction and move into your passions and do it with confidence. And if you fail big, then fail quickly and, move towards a change. But don't let your fears hinder you, or your insecurities, or other people with limiting beliefs. But be willing to fail, and failure necessarily isn't failure, because we learn from that, we grow from that. And I think I was so afraid of doing everything right, being liked by everyone. That was a little bit more of my temperament. But instead, I would tell my 25-year-old self, you're going to fail, and just do it really well.
I like that. Well, awesome, Tom. We really appreciate this one. It was, I joked before we recorded that we've had a few chats recently, but this one was good. We touched on some different stuff. So I thank you, for joining us here today. We've had a good time. And for the listener, if you made it this far, you probably enjoyed what Tom had to say, as you should have. It would really benefit us if you go to your podcast app of choice, click 5 stars, leave a review, and then we can bring on more great guests like Tom down the road. So thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.